Hello and welcome to Live with Abouna on CYC. Today we are blessed and honoured to have Father George Nakhil from St. Damiana's and St. Athanasios Church in Punchbowl. Thank you for joining us, Abouna. We're honoured to have you here today.
Thanks, Sarah. It's my pleasure too. Thank you.
Thank you. Today we've got quite a few questions that we have already received from you, but we'd just like to encourage you once again to keep your questions coming, and the SMS is 0416 551 292. You can also send us a Twitter, and the handle is @CYCNow, and also on the Facebook page, which is Christian Youth Channel. Abouna, the first question that we have says, is it possible to serve too much?
It's very possible to serve too much, of course. We remember, of course, that our Lord Jesus Christ is asking us to love Him from all our hearts, our soul, our thoughts, our intention. And having this in mind, a person could feel like he's giving all his life as a sacrifice to the Lord. In this particular time, we are celebrating, of course, the fasting of the apostles, and we know that very well that the disciples and the apostles have really given their lives as a sacrifice to the Lord, and they serve, giving every moment, risking their lives and going through many difficulties. So to serve the Lord is the most honorable thing, and I think all of us are called to serve the Lord. And it is very possible to serve the Lord fully, full consecration. Like the monastic life, there's consecrated people who are serving the Lord in many fields, priesthood, and many others. So, but having said that, of course, there are boundaries we have to consider. The age of that person is asking the question. There are academic commitments, there are social commitments, family commitments, where this all has to be considered when we talk about serving the Lord. The gender as well, the place you're living, safety-wise, and so on. And who are the stakeholders who are sharing your life with? So, for example, a husband and wife. If the husband is so enthusiastic of serving God, and he may go out a lot and serve on account of his house responsibility, I don't think this is very right. And of course, vice versa, where the wife does that. So there is a need of a balance here. Normally, the faster, if two people are running together, one of them, if someone is faster than the other, I believe the faster has to slow down and walk with the other person in one family, like a husband and wife, for example, and so on. So there are many boundaries we have to consider talking about serving a lot or serving the Lord in many excessively. I still believe the need of the confession father to be involved in such decision of services is very appropriate and really needed. The other aspect of why am I serving too much? Is it a social thing, or it's just very purely the reason is I would like to serve the Lord with no other intentions and no other hidden agendas? That's why the confession father would be very helpful to clarify all these things and guide the person into a progressive spiritual growth. That's my view to it, yeah.
Thank you, Abouna. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you're right in terms of the fact that there's a lot of factors to consider, and you have to take into account maybe also the intention of the service as well. So that's, there's a few things to bear in mind behind that question.
Yeah.
So maybe ask your confession father who knows you best, I think.
Yeah, we need guidance, all of us. Even us as priests, we get guidance from our confession fathers in limitation of services. And I recall His Holiness Pope Shenouda, when we first ordained, he gave us this advice that serve as long as you're not disturbing your family or you are harming your family. So there's still a need to consider that. Having said that, of course, you need to work well with the other people or the stakeholders, how to make them really going with you at the same speed, hopefully.
So everything in moderation.
Absolutely, at least to start with that, yeah.
Thank you, Abouna. We have another question that's just come through, and I think it's probably refers more to sort of addictions, than anything else. The exact question is it a sin to be addicted to coffee or tea?
Yeah, anything that I feel I'm bounded with, there's some bonds controlling me, I think it's not really right. Anything, any habitual things, even in my language, in my body language, we are meant to be free, not to be in slaves to any habit. So I believe that applies to coffee and tea. Again, I remember Pope Shenouda, he mentioned that he said at a certain point of his life, he said, I had to drink a cup of tea, a cup of coffee in the morning, early in the morning. Then I realized this is not really right. I have to get out of this habit. And he worked hard into it, and he felt like he's free of it. So we as Christians have to leave every bond and be free from every bond, any slavery, no matter what it is, including coffee and tea and coke and all these kind of things. It doesn't only apply to smoking and alcohol, of course it could apply to anything.
Yeah, it's funny how something that we think could be so simple or harmless as say coffee or tea could be something that may potentially be something that's not really in your best interest, because it's probably not the coffee or the tea itself, it's the act of being addicted to something or enslaved to something or you know, being held hostage or to something, whether it's tea or coffee or anything else.
Yeah, and I know many people who abstain of having Holy Communion because they wake up in the morning and say, I have to have my coffee and my tea. So it may affect their spiritual life somehow as well. So my encouragement is to go through it slowly for that person to get out of it, if anyone is addicted to coffee and tea. Nothing wrong with having coffee and tea. We all have coffee and tea, but if you don't have it, it's still okay.
But once again, don't take it too far. Everything in moderation once again.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Abouna.
Yeah.
The next question refers to, I think, hardworking or you know, being fruitful, and says, is it a sin to not look for work and rely on the government support?
What do you think, sir?
Well, over to you, Abouna.
I think it's a sin. God wants us to work and be fruitful and to utilize all our talents. Let's recall the parable of the talents that our Lord Jesus Christ said, someone is given 5, someone given 2, someone given 1. It's not only applied to spiritual gifts that God is giving us, salvation and sacraments, the grace of God, the Bible, all these kind of things, which are talents, are given to us. But it applies as well to our physical and intellectual talents that we have received. So God has given us talents. We have meant to utilize these talents. When it comes to work, study, we have to fully utilize it. And I believe God will judge us as much as He will judge us of spiritual talents He has given us. He will come to judge us and say, I have given you intellectuality, intelligence, skills, and you haven't used it properly. You have digged your talent on the ground, and you haven't utilized it. So I believe strongly that we have to use what God has given us. That's number one. Number two, I have seen as a priest, and I'm sure all the priests are sharing that with me, the vast majority of those people who are suffering from psychological problems, in many cases apply to those people who are not working or just sitting at home and doing nothing. The percentage could grow higher when we talk about male compared to females, males compared to females, but still the same concept, that people who are not working while they are capable of working and the age of working, they are exposed to many psychological problems. So working is good to get your energy out. Even in monastic life, the abbess of the father let their children, the monks work hard during the day, so they come to themselves tired, pray, sleep, then wake up for the midnight praises. So working is a blessing. The other side of the coin as well, that you are utilizing a system like in a wrong way. The Commonwealth system or the Centrelink system, whatever, where people are using the loops here and there to utilize and getting benefits. Sometimes they are exploiting the system in a wrong way, and that's a sin. Stealing is a sin. By all means, it is a sin. It's a kind of stealing where you get things not really of your right. So the answer is, it's a sin? Yes, it's a sin. I can't interpret it any other way. Unless someone is sick, someone having medical conditions or whatever, there are other reasons that would stop you from working. Yeah.
Abouna, just to follow up on that question, with regards to talents, do you think that every single person on the face of the planet has been given a specific talent by God, that no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter how, what you think of yourself or how you feel, that you do actually have a God-given talent, and maybe you just need to find it, maybe you just need to, search for it. So do you think that God has given each and every one of us a talent?
I believe so. I believe everyone have received talents, no matter if that person, even if he's not that intellectual, very intellectually smart or whatever, but there are talents. Everyone is giving talents, and you're absolutely right that every person needs to discover his talents that God has given him or her. In school time, it's a good chance to discover talents, study and see where you find yourself moved, which area of like which field you're interested in. When it comes to hobbies and stuff like that, again, you need to expose yourself to situations where you find whether you are good in this or not. I know people have learned music, for example, playing instruments in a very old age. Simply they got the talent, but they have never examined themselves whether they know that talent or not. And they started in a long age and in old age, and then they are really like very experienced in it now. And many people who are drawing, for example, and they could do this stuff long ago, but they have never tried it before, or circumstances did not allow them to do it. And in an old age, they have started it, and they found themselves really growing fast in learning it and doing it. But everybody has talents. God has equipped us with things that even when we die, we will not discover them. I believe we are only utilizing maybe 10% of what God has given us, sadly saying that. But if anyone is honest and working hard to find out their abilities, they will be surprised, I guess.
Maybe even it's a good idea to ask people, whether it's friends, family, ask your parents if you can't find your talent or you can't see it in your own eyes, maybe seek it from other people's opinions as well, because you might find that your parents think that you're very good at something, your teacher or your servants think that you're gifted in a certain area and that you could explore. So
yeah, people are mirrors, like in many cases they are very helpful in telling us what we can't see by ourselves. Yes, fully agree, Sarah. Yep.
Thank you, Abouna. Thank you. It's a very interesting question. The next question that we've received is regarding marriage and Coptic marriage and the Coptic process of marriage. It says, when I'm getting to know another Coptic person for the purpose of marriage, is it okay for me to judge their level of spirituality and whether it is close to my own or not? If so, what are the signs I should be looking for?
As I recall this to the first question, if two people are running a journey or walking a journey together, they would need to be on the same speed. Otherwise, there's going to be a big gap. So it applies very much to spirituality when we are in partnership. And the strongest, the perpetual partnership is marriage. So the couple are living together, they have really to be in unity in many aspects. So I strongly believe there is a need of compatibility when it comes to spirituality. Having said that, you cannot have it identical. There gotta be someone is stronger than the other. So we are looking at a range of things rather than looking at a specific details. When it comes to spirituality, in many times we misjudge spirituality. Spirituality doesn't necessarily mean someone is just a servant in the church, which is a good sign to be a spiritual person. But there are many people who are living a spiritual life and be quiet about it. So don't misjudge when you are considering someone's spirituality or level of spirituality. Some people are living the code of the Bible, the commandments, and they're applying it seriously in the fear of God, where they are not really showing this kind of behavior to outside. People may not know about it. And many times I've seen people who are living a very spiritual life, but they're very quiet about it. So in many times we're misjudging. And on the other hand, there are people in the church and like showing as if they are living in the church, but on the other side, they are not really living the Bible accordingly. So sometimes we do misjudgment. But the very broad lines that I think someone needs to look at is a person really having a confession father, practicing the sacraments, is involved in the life of the church. So he's coming to the feast and the fastings and hopefully serving, like, or she's serving. So he is or she is a part of the service of the life of the church. Practicing sacraments, and I'm talking about confession and Holy Communion, that of course the other ones I'm sure they have received in their young age, but surely these are signs of spiritual life. Occasionally, some people take the risk to get married to someone who is not as spiritual as the person, and there is a risk here. In hoping that they can pull out that person high to yourself. There is a risk, but it happens. Sometimes you get dragged down rather than going up. That's why wisdom is really needed there. You can't take a risk in marriage, a huge risk in marriage. You can serve in many aspects. When it comes to decision of marriage, that's my view. I think we gotta be a bit selfish here. When it comes to spirituality, you don't want to destroy your salvation. The utmost goal of marriage is salvation. So if I'm getting engaged, getting married to someone who is fully far away from God, I'm risking my spiritual life and my salvation. So that has to be considered seriously, I think.
So it is okay to sort of gauge their spirituality just to see if you're, like you said, running at the same speed, but sometimes we can fall into the trap of misjudging because based on appearances and stuff.
Yes.
Okay, that was a really good question. So it's very interesting. I'm sure that they had the right intention in mind when they thought of this question. It's probably touches on a lot of sort of areas in terms of judging and just working out that that you've got to be on par with the future partner. It's a big decision.
Yeah, like we've met people where the husband or the wife before marriage were very committed to the church. So the man or the woman are very committed to the church, and the other partner was not. Was promising he or she will, but the reality after marriage, it doesn't work that way. So one of the partners want to take the kids to church and want to get them involved in the life of the church, where the other person don't prefer that for other reasons. Maybe prefer to have activities outside like sports or other things, and doesn't put Sunday as a priority for their lives. Or even a problem may happen in the church and they'll switch off, say no, they're not going to church anymore. So that's why the basics are very important when it comes to reality and practicality. Yeah.
Thank you, Abouna. Well, we really enjoy getting all your questions. Please keep them coming. And if you'd like to send us questions, please do so on the SMS number at 0416 551 292 or on Twitter, and the handle is @CYCNow, or on Facebook on Christian Youth Channel. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. Thank you and welcome back to Live with Abouna on CYC. Today we're blessed and honoured to have Father George Nakhil with us, and he's from St. Damiana's and St. Athanasius Church in Punchbowl. Thanks for joining us, Abouna, again.
Thank you, Sarah, again.
Please keep your questions coming. Like I said, you can SMS us on 0416 551 292 and Twitter the handle is @CYCNow and Facebook, Christian Youth Channel. So we've got another question coming in that deals with, I think it's dealing with Abouna hanging around bad company, so to speak. It's quite a lengthy question, so I'll read it all to you. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good morals. We are all sinners. What would you consider to be bad company? If I distance myself from a member of the church who is, for example, sexually promiscuous, am I judging or condemning them, which Luke 6:37 warns us not to do?" It's a very full question.
It's very important.
It's a two-part question.
I guess it's a very important question. And we have to distinguish between judging others and being in a company with some people that are not sharing the same values as I am. So judging, it comes in the process of the mind that that person is not good, he is worse than me, and so on. To having the discerning spirit, there's a gift of the Holy Spirit, it's called discerning the spirit. So I need to know what's right from what's wrong. This is not judging. As the saints said, we judge the sin, not the sinner. So the sin is sinful, but the sinner is loved by me and by God. Having said that, so this when it comes to judging. Judging, it doesn't mean I'm naive, not say this is right and this is not right. I need to know what's right from what's wrong. So if someone is doing something wrong, this is wrong, this is not right. I still love that person, I still respect him or her. This is not what we're talking about here. So I could love someone and I don't need to be in company with that one. Why should I be with that person if he's doing something wrong? Actually, being with someone who's doing something wrong, I'm encouraging that person to continue the wrong thing. So definitely the two verses are not really contradicting. To avoid wrong company, because that may affect me spiritually, doesn't mean I'm judging that person, I'm keeping away from him or her because she is or he is bad. I can't see that happening. No, I would rather care for my spiritual life. And as much as I'm caring for my spiritual life, I need to keep distant because I'm weak. Who is not weak? We're all weak. If I stay in a room where people are smoking, my clothes will come out with smoke. Similar to spirituality and behavior and morals, if I'm sitting and hanging around with people who are doing the wrong things and have wrong thoughts, I'll be affected, no matter how much I'm strong. The ideal thing is a group of strong believers get together with someone who is far away from God or doing the wrong things and pull that person up rather than I'm going down, I'm dragging down. That's a very important here, that I need to be a strong influence to that person. Sometimes I won't be able to do by myself. I need some company with me, of a group of strong Christians, a group of friends who can really help me to get that person up who is far away from God. So, no, if there is a risk, I'd rather stay away, keep away. Prayers are very important to that person. This is probably the most strong thing I can do. As I said, as a group of friends could help that person, gathering around and try to get him, grab him to the right company, right places, and so on, but not whatsoever to get involved in that person's lifestyle. That would definitely negatively affecting me.
There's a saying that goes, birds of the same feather flock together. So yeah, usually we'll tend to say, oh no, they won't affect me, it's okay, I can, hang around them. But I think after a while, people have, their traits, their habits, their characteristics may rub off on you. So, and people of the same sort of habits will tend to flock together. So maybe just to be, cautious, keep your distance, but still not judge them for whatever they're doing.
Still love them. If they're coming to hang around with in the right places, with the right language, I guess we are accepting them, and be very watchful. Our spiritual life is the most precious thing. Our salvation, as I said, is the most precious thing that we have to look after. So put guards to it, and be very careful what comes in our minds and our thoughts and our senses. So we gotta be careful. We gotta be careful. I'm sure God will help those people out who are far away from God by loving them, offering them love, and praying for them, getting them to deal with the right people, like a priest, for example, to deal with them, or a servant, and that will be work eventually. And indeed, I have seen this in many cases. There are youth who've been far away from God, and a group of youth gather together and surround that person, and he gets lifted up. We hear this spiritually. In the Bible, there's a story about Saul, King Saul. It's a very short story. It says that he was coming down and he has met a group of people who were praying and prophesying. And just being inside the company of those people, he started to prophesy as well. So it's like an infection, like you get into it when you are surrounded by spiritual people, you get that. But the fear is the opposite may happen, that where I get dragged down. That's why you have to be careful. If you want to get someone in the right way, the right place, you have to be strong enough. You have to get a good company of strong believers. You need support even for the spiritual servant or spiritual father as well. That's how it works. But you're not judging. If you are considering you keep yourself away, no, you're not judging that person. You still love that person. And you may say, I could do like that person if I were put in the same circumstances. So it's not judging.
That's really good advice, Abouna. I'm sure we've sort of all been in this circumstance at one point or another, so we'll bear that in mind for the next time. I hope that's helped. And speaking of the first topic that we were talking about, talents, a viewer has actually just sent in a question regarding talents and says, if we miss out on God's talents, on God's will by not working hard or by making bad choices, then later decide to start being diligent and coming closer to God, will He give us a second chance to gain His will and use our talents?
Absolutely, yes. And you could really achieve what you've lost in many years in a limited time with the grace of God. So when you put time in God's hand, they don't work in our own time. So 1 year is not a year anymore. God will bless that a lot. And there are many people who started serving the Lord in an old age, and they have been very fruitful. So just yesterday we celebrated the feast of Saint Moses the Black, and I recall in the Paradise of the Fathers, Saint Isidorus, the monk, when Moses the Black went to him to confess his sins and he started his spiritual life, God with the Holy Spirit revealed to Saint Isidorus that Saint Moses the Black will be higher than him in spiritual rank. Even Saint Isidorus, like he was a monk, he's a priest of all the ascetics, of all the thousands of monks go to take their confessions. There's only one priest in the whole ascetics. So while this was happening, Saint Isidorus have seen Moses the Black to be in a higher rank in heaven. So there's a prayer. He said, "Blessed are you, Lord, because you have lifted those people who came to you in the 11th hour to higher to those who spent all their life in your approval." He talks about himself as a young priest, was ordained. He went to monastic life in a young age, been a priest for that many number of years, a confession father of thousands of monks. And that man who been a killer, an adulterer, all this thief, all these kind of bad things, came to spiritual life in the 11th hour, and he was promoted higher than him. This is God's work. So it was full encouragement, I would say, to that person. If you've wasted some time before, it's time to get back on track and continue.
So our God is a merciful God, and we always believe in second chances, and
Absolutely.
you can be redeemed even at the last 11th hour.
Absolutely. He's so loving. He won't break, as we say, he won't blow just a tiny little light or fire. Just he will give a chance to the last breath of your life and my life.
Good. Good. Thank you, Abouna. There's another question that's come in about service now. So it seems to be a very service talent oriented episode.
It's a season of service. The feast of the fasting of the apostles. This is a season of serving.
So it's
So
very
good,
fitting.
Good timing.
Yes. It says, what can I do when I feel that my service is becoming a burden?
Any more elaborate? What does that person means exactly?
That's all they've written. They've said, what can I do when I feel that my service is becoming a burden? Well, if I sort of was to, say what I thought of this question, I'd say maybe is it like getting in the way of other duties? Is it maybe, overriding, say, study or the family commitments, or maybe, like you said, that they're not going at the same pace of their partner, that it's getting of the way of other things. That's maybe how it's becoming a burden, or maybe that on the flip side, is it becoming too much? Do they feel like they've taken a lot on and they can't handle the workload, or they're feeling sort of that they're weighed down by it? So I suppose it could mean two things, Abouna, to be honest.
Well, as advice for the question was similar at the beginning. Like, it's always important to consider the advice of your confession father, who knows you up front, and he would help you out to figure out what's your capability and what's happening in your life overall. But there could be a trick from the devil. You are serving, and your service is fruitful somehow, and the devil wants to stop you down somehow, like slow you down by putting these ideas in your mind. So that's why I guess in any decision we take, we have to take our time. We don't need to rush decisions. So you need to really to consider what's happening really in your life. Is it because you have lukewarmness in your heart, and maybe that's why it's becoming a burden? Could you work things around? Serving the Lord, as I said, is a very honorable thing to do. It goes as a priority of your life. The priority of your week. Sunday is the first day of the week, not really the weekend. It's the week beginning, and the first hours of the week I give to God. So it has to be reconsidered really carefully. What's happening? Why it's a burden? Did you put too much on, and then becomes a burden? In this case, fine. I think with the advice of your confession father, you could take things offload of your of the service you're doing. But if it's just you've been not nourished spiritually, that's why it's a burden. There are many circumstances could go around it. But definitely the confession father, your confession father, will be able to help you out and what to do, what not to do when it's a burden where you need to cut off or reduce, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Abouna. We love hearing from you, and we're getting a flood of questions, so keep them coming. The next question says, when I send Bible verses through text message, I don't include people who are not Christian. Is that wrong? In an environment like Australia, if the person doesn't consider this like insult or take it sensitively, I guess you need to ask those people that you circulate your verses, they like it. Once you get their approval, you can send it. I don't think it's a big deal if you talk to these persons who are not Christians and you ask them, would you mind if I normally send a daily verse around to my friends? Would you like to include you? And if they said yes, sure, that's great. If they don't want, they don't want. So instead of getting into the embarrassment of saying, oh, please take me out of your list and so on, I guess it depends who are they and as well who they are and how close to you as well. But at the end of the day, we just put seeds, and hopefully God will let these seeds grow. There's no harm in asking, I guess.
Yeah, I guess no harm in asking.
And as well, if they're not Christian, it's probably your way of preaching to them and spreading the word and the message of God. So that could be probably very beneficial for them.
Absolutely. I know in some working places, especially in the government, employees are not allowed to, for example, do this stuff with like sending messages or putting any verses, like sending verses to their colleagues and stuff like that. So we gotta be careful, of course, what are the environment surrounding us. But as I said, it doesn't harm to ask, I guess.
Good. Thank you, Abouna. Lastly, Abouna, we have one final question for you.
Sure.
It says, if Abouna can go back in time to his younger self, what is something he now knows about God that he would have wanted to know back then?
Oh.
Bit of a retrospect question.
Okay.
Anything that you've been able to discover from your years of experience as a priesthood that you thought, I wish somebody would have told me that back then, or I wish I had have known that, or this particular piece of advice would have made my life or my service or easier or increased my spirituality at all?
Yeah. Well, surprisingly, in our young age, we have lots of experience with God. I'm not talking about myself. Any person who's young, in childhood age, the purity and innocence of the person allow them to experience the Lord. As a priest now, I know many kids in the church who have spiritual experiences that maybe elders would never have. This is when it comes to the exposure to God's beauty in a young age. But having said that, of course, as now, after that many years in service, or as we get old, doesn't necessarily mean as a priest, but as we get old and we see people around, I guess as a priest, as me myself, I have learned that God is so loving and so caring, more than what I expected when I was young. Seeing his deals with people, how he accepts people, how he deals in different ways to get people back to him. He's so merciful, so loving, something I haven't fully realized into that depth when I was young. So I'm not sure this is answering or not, but
I think so.
this is what comes in my mind.
I think so. That's because sometimes maybe we take it for granted, or we don't think about it too much in our youth.
Yeah.
And so you come to realize that more as an adult, but you wish you knew that before. And
sure.
And probably having said that advice to younger people, they can take advantage of it and learn from your wisdom and take it on board and grow from it. So
hopefully.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for at the moment. That brings us to an end of the program of Live with Abouna on CYC. We want to thank you, Abouna, for blessing us with your time and answering all our questions.
Thanks, Sarah. It's my
all
pleasure.
Your answers. Thank you.
Pleasure. Blessing.
And I just wanted to thank all the viewers for sending in all their questions, and keep them coming. If we didn't have time to answer them today, we'll hopefully answer them in next week's program. So, like I said before, you can SMS it to 0416 551 292 or Twitter, and the handle is @CYC Now, or Facebook, Christian Youth Channel. And if you have any questions, please feel free to keep them coming, and we'll hopefully answer them next time. And thank you for joining us once again. Goodbye.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
The church is a place where